This conference will now be recorded.
There you go. Let's click into your presentation, Andy.
Click here.
Here you go.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you for coming to our meeting today. This is a great turnout. I appreciate everyone's time today. My name is Michelle Crocker. I work for KeyBank, and this is what I do for KeyBank. So my entire job is to go out to businesses and conduct meetings like this one, in hopes that you'll take one thing away from the meeting that you can apply to your everyday financial life and hopefully make some positive changes on your financial wellness journey. I've been with KeyBank for about 7 years. Prior to taking this role, I was a branch manager. This job is way more fun than being a branch manager. I get to bring food. I get to see people, sometimes light bulbs go off. Sometimes it's just, a great refresher for information. So this is the best job in the bank. Sometimes my bankers argue with me. So I did bring a banker along with me. I always bring a banker along with me because I want you to have a local resource that you can have a follow-up dialogue with if there's questions that you have, scenarios that you want to kind of run through. Alice is actually our local branch manager, and she can be a resource for you for that. So do you want to take a second?
Yeah, sure. Welcome, everyone. Thank you again. Yes, we're so happy to be here. And my name is Alice Mogensen. I am a licensed relationship manager, so that just means I'm a banker, and I can do all kinds of things. I'm going to I love my job. I was just going to say, I've been with the bank almost 8 years, and I have to say, I really do love making a difference with people's financial wellness, and it's something that I feel very passionate about. I love sitting down with my clients and making that happen, but I'm on East Avenue, right around the corner.
Awesome. And I do want to welcome the folks that are joining on the phone. Thank you so much for joining. If you have a question or a comment, feel free to go ahead and just speak up. I won't ask you to mute your lines as long as it's quiet on your end, but feel free to speak up with any questions. We're going to move through this kind of quickly. So if there are questions, you don't have to wait till the end. Just shout them out, and we'll try to do get your questions answered. So we have a little agenda here. We're going to talk about knowing your options to get out of debt. We're going to talk about how you can make a plan. I'll show you a couple of different ways that you can apply payments. We have 3 different strategies for managing debt. We're going to talk a little bit about understanding your credit score. There are some really great reference materials in the folders that you guys have. So on the right-hand side, there's actually 3 flyers. One is called Managing Your Debt. One is called Knowing Your Credit Options. And one is a pie chart that talks about credit scores. So there's a lot of information on those 3 flyers that we may not have a chance to get to today, but it's really great information for you to take away. And again, if there's questions, feel free to pop those questions out. And then how we can help. So I'm assuming if you're in this room, you probably aren't debt-free. Is anybody in the room debt-free? Most of us are, right? Someday we all have goals to be debt-free, or at least get our debt under control to a point where we could potentially retire someday, or feel good about not having a whole bunch of extra payments to make, and feel like our debt is really manageable. So we're going to go through a few different ways that you can try to start to eliminate your debt. KeyBank actually has a recommendation which some feel is a little high and some feel is a little low, but we actually recommend thinking about your annual salary, that you not have more than 67% of your annual salary in outstanding loan obligations, not including your mortgage. So for any of us that have student loan debt, that might be, way off the charts. And other people say to me, Michelle, I think it really should be more like 25%. But sort of, to kind of put yourself and your debt position into perspective, we feel pretty good about financial wellness if you're kind of in that 67% of your annual income or lower as far as extra debt payments. So first thing you want to think about whenever you're starting to think about managing your debt is not going to have really anything to do with the debt. It's going to have to do with making sure that you have enough money in a savings so that if something were to happen, you wouldn't necessarily borrow money to get through whatever that scenario is, or put it on a credit card. That can be really demotivating. If you're on this strategy to manage debt and you're making extra payments, and then you need 4 tires for the car because you got a nail in one of them and you can't just replace one, you've got to replace all 4. That could be a big emergency. That's something that oftentimes people will end up putting back on a credit card or putting back on a line of credit. And if you do that enough times, you tend to get discouraged and give up on your debt management plan and feel like you're not going anywhere. So I always recommend, before you start any debt management strategy, recognize what a real life emergency would be for you, or a real life amount that you might have to use the credit cards for, and allocate your extra money in your budget before you start making debt payments towards getting the savings to the level that you want it, and then continuing contributions to that savings. So if you do end up using it, you're not, looking at a zero balance in your savings account. Does that make sense? The other thing that goes into managing debt is, having a budget, having an idea of what you can comfortably, realistically put towards extra debt payments, and not, only do it when you can. So when you're thinking about your budget, you're thinking about things like groceries, you're thinking about things like daycare, you're thinking about, the electric bill, all of the things that we have to pay that aren't necessarily debts, when we're looking at our income versus our expenses. And then what we're going to do is we're going to identify an amount of money that we can realistically put towards managing our debts or paying down on our debts. We're going to look at this presentation and look at dollar amounts like $100, $150. So we're not talking huge amounts of money. We're just talking about an extra amount within our budget that we can allocate for debt payments. So once you get to the point that you're ready to go ahead and start making extra payments on the debts that you have, step number one is writing down a list of all of the debts that you're looking to eliminate. So who can give me an example of some things that might go on that list? Car loan, absolutely.
Credit card payment.
The credit cards. And when you're making your list for your credit cards, most of us have more than one credit card, right? So it's any credit card that you have a balance on that you're not paying in full every month, because that's not really a debt you're looking to manage. But you're going to list them out separately. You're going to say Citibank, you're going to say Sears, you're going to say Macy's, you're going to say Home Depot. You're going to have a list, you might have 10 credit cards. That's okay. But make sure you list them out separately, because we're going to add some things to this list. What else would we want on our list? College. Student loans, absolutely.
Personal loans.
Personal loans, yes. Anything else?
Mortgage.
Mortgage goes on the list, even though it's maybe not the first thing we're going to pay. It definitely goes on the list.
Medical bills.
Medical bills, I love that one. That's pretty common that a lot of us have medical bills, yes. Anything else you guys can think of? All right, good. So I think you have a good understanding of what goes on this list. We just don't include things like our electric bill and our phone bill, because those are always unfortunately going to be there unless we live off the grid. So we just want to make sure our list is really anything that we're looking to get to a zero balance. Second thing you want to have on this list is, what's the balance that I owe on whatever the obligation is that I've listed. So we're going to list all of those credit card balances. We're going to list all of the amounts that we owe on our auto loan. We're going to list all of the medical bills, and we're going to list those out separately if there's separate amounts that we owe. So that's going to be the second column in our spreadsheet. Third column in our spreadsheet is going to be the interest rate. So sometimes that's a little hard to find, especially on credit cards. You might be at a promotional rate. You might have a couple of different interest rates going on. So don't be afraid to call the issuer or the financial institution and ask them what you're getting for an interest rate on that particular obligation. By the way, while you have them on the phone, you can ask them for a lower rate. Sometimes they'll do that. And it doesn't always require a credit check or anything. Just they're not going to reduce it out of the goodness of their heart. But if you ask them and you've been a good customer of theirs, they may very well likely reduce your interest rate. And that's money that you're saving right off the top.
Or give you a payoff amount.
Or give you a payoff amount, yes, a lower amount that you could pay, sure. Fourth thing that you want on your list is, what's the minimum expectation of me to stay out of trouble on my credit report? So if you've got the Sears credit card, I don't even know if they have Sears credit cards anymore, or why you're using this.
They do, okay.
You have the Sears credit card, it's, $1,000 balance, you pay $100 every month because you're trying to get rid of that thing. When you're making your list, what you want to put on this list is, what's the minimum payment that they're asking me to make? So not what do I usually make? That comes into your budgeting. It's what's the minimum expectation to keep this, current and on time. Because with some of the strategies we're going to use, we're only going to make minimum payments on certain obligations while we tackle other obligations. So it's important to know what that number is, and that can also help you to identify what you actually have available for extra debt payments. Does that make sense? So then we have the easy part, right? Apply the money to your balances. It's not always the easy part. So we're going to look at, let me just click this here. We're gonna look at, is there a way for me to move that?
The two little arrows on the top right, that one version thing. And I just go back to the presentation.
And then put that, look at that, look at us go, all right. So who can tell me what a principal payment is? Yes,
That will go towards the shoulder left on your phone.
the actual balance, right? So if you make a principal payment, you still have to make your regular payment. It doesn't count as your regular payment. But making a principal payment can actually help you stay on track with your plan. So if you have a little bit of extra money, or you're applying an extra $100, like you can see in this example, if you tell the financial institution to take that money off the balance, that's exactly what's going to happen. And it is going to save you time on your loan, and it's going to save you interest on your loan. I would caution you that if you're making extra payments and you're not telling the financial institution to make them as principal payments, what they might be doing is just adding the extra that you're making onto the next month's payment. And that's okay. The math kind of all works out the same in the long run, but the risk that you take is that next month, things are a little tighter, right? And so you look at, well, I paid an extra $100 last month, so I'll make it $100 less this month. And then you just lost your progress. So making a principal payment just keeps you accountable to your plan. And it also helps you to, as you can see in the example, save time. So this example, the person paid off their debt a year and a month sooner. That's a big deal on a car payment. And then, the interest savings isn't huge, it's $380. But if I didn't have to make that car payment for an entire year, that's, to me, a significant savings. So any questions on principal payments? Okay. So here are the three strategies. We're going to run through each one quickly. So we're going to talk about paying the highest interest first, starting with the lowest amount, and also consolidation options. So anytime you have decided that you're going to make minimum payments on all of your obligations and start to apply your extra funds to a strategy, if you do apply your extra funds to the highest interest rate first, that's going to be the strategy that's going to save you the most interest. So it's going to save you the most money. So if you're a finance person and you're going to be motivated by money and not worry about anything else, the strategy for you would be this strategy where you do end up like extra payments. In this example, the person made $150 extra towards their $3,000 balance while making minimum payments on the $1,500. They actually saved $481 in interest and they paid off their debt 3 months sooner. So this is a great strategy for saving money. Why do you think a lot of people don't use this strategy?
Trying to take care of all.
You're still making payments on everything, minimum payments on everything.
Or more on other things too. I think you're doing it better that way.
Sometimes a lot of times what people will do is they'll just make extra payments on everything and they never see any progress. And this strategy is very similar. If you're making extra payments, $150 a month extra on a $10,000 balance, you might give up after a while because it's going to feel like nothing's happening. You're still making payments on everything else. You're still making extra payments on this big one. And even though you're saving money, if you're not really motivated by that, you might just say, I'm never getting out of debt. This is crazy. I'm just going to give up.
You don't pick that one because the amount to begin with is so high, it's daunting.
That's right. That's right. If you've got a big balance with a big interest rate, it might not be the best strategy for you. But for some people, it works. For somebody, it's going to drive them crazy to tackle a smaller balance with a 0% interest rate while they've got something accruing at 27%. It just, it's going to be up to you and your personality what's going to work best for you. Sometimes we blend strategies together too. Strategy number 2, you guys may have heard of the snowball method. So with this strategy, what you do is you take your extra funds, that $150, and you make minimum payments on everything, and you tackle the smallest balance first. So thinking about your spreadsheet, and you make payments, those extra payments on that smallest balance until it's gone. And then you get to celebrate because it's gone, right?
Don't go shopping.
Don't go shopping. Don't close your card. Don't close that account.
Yeah, at the car.
Because that will have a negative impact on your credit report. If it's a revolving line, if it's a credit card or credit line, it's going to reduce your availability of funds, of credit available to you, and it actually can have a negative impact on your utilization of revolving credit. 30% of your credit score is utilization of revolving credit. And you want to stay so that you only utilize 30% or less of credit that's available to you. So if you have a $1,000 credit card and you pay it in full every month, but you use $900 every month, you're 90% utilized and your credit score is going to do this. It's going to go down. okay? If you have 3 $1,000 credit cards and you have one that you like because it's a rewards card and you use it $900 a month, you're only 30% utilized because it's of the 3,000 that's available to you. So don't close your cards. It will affect your utilization. It also could affect the age of your credit, so you do want to be mindful whenever you're considering closing cards, because if your age of your credit goes down, that's another percentage of the pie chart that's going to have a negative impact.
But also, if you have 3 credit cards and you only use one, you're at risk of having the other 2 closed for non-use.
It's true. I mean, there are some strategies I personally have implemented to make sure that that doesn't happen. We usually recommend putting something on one of those other cards you don't use that's an auto pay, and it's something you have to have. I have 3 dogs. They've got to have dog food. Chewy.com is my best friend.
Yep.
They auto ship me dog food. It auto charges my credit card that I don't use, and it gets auto paid. So there are some strategies that you can deploy to make sure that doesn't happen, but it's a good point. You don't want to just let it sit and never do anything, because you do take the chance that it could get closed. And then it's the same impact to your credit score.
And this is one of the quickest ways you can see your credit score actually go up as well.
Right.
So obviously strategy number 2. So
Yes.
definitely.
So, and the idea behind this is bigger payments on bigger debts. So when you get to that big debt that you have, that $10,000, you might be making a $500 payment on it. And so, because you always apply what you've already been spending towards the next bigger obligation until you get rid of it. And that feels good. Strategy number 3 is debt consolidation. So the first 2 strategies, you don't have to have good credit. You can have really bad credit for the first 2 strategies. It doesn't matter, because there's really no involvement as far as applications or credit qualifications to implement any of those 2 strategies. When you're thinking about consolidating debt, the financial institution that you're working with is going to have some guidelines as far as debt to income ratios that they want to see you at, credit scores they want to see you at. But it's a great way to kind of get one payment in place if you have a bunch of things that you're looking to eliminate. And there's always a light at the end of the tunnel when you consolidate debt, as long as you're using some type of fixed term obligation. And it's pretty simple. So, and it really can save you a lot of money by consolidating. I can tell you that I personally consolidated I had a 30-year mortgage. I had to have like hardwood floors in my house and all kinds of, the stuff we need, right? Furniture. And I put a bunch of it on credit cards. And then a few years later, interest rates started to drop. And so I went to the bank and I said, after some coercing from my friendly bankers, that I should apply for a consolidation refinance of my home. I ended up consolidating all my debt, refinancing my home, taking my mortgage from a 30-year to a 15-year, paid everything off, and I had the same payment that I started off.
Amazing.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's because interest rates went down. So if you haven't looked at your interest rate on your mortgage in a while, look at it. Maybe it'll make sense, maybe it won't. The bankers have a responsibility to do what's right for you. So they wouldn't recommend something that wasn't within the goals that you had set for yourself. How are we doing on time?
We're at 20 minutes.
We're at 20 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and just leave this slide up on the screen, and I'm going to give Alice a chance to talk, just because I know we have one thing we want to.
Sure. So I'll give an example, or
just do the
this right here.
Lovely raffle.
Okay, great. All right. So hopefully there's been some takeaways so far. Hopefully, but what we really want to do is we really want to know. Really, is there anything else that you would want us to come back for? But just check off what you're interested in, because we would really love to know just what we call our needs and review, to make sure that if there is anything that we would cover it, and really kind of get more of what you're interested in knowing. Obviously we did that, but we've got many other things that we could possibly have some talks about. So what we will do is we're going to gather those, and then we're going to put it in a drawing. So I'd love to have that information.
Yeah, so we'll do the drawing before we leave. So when you're done with that paper, just flip it over, leave it behind if you need to go, and we'll collect those at the end. Don't feel like you have to put your contact information. We can find you here, so you don't have to put your contact information. The only time you would want to put your contact information on that form is if for some reason there's a question that you have or some type of follow-up you want Alice or I to reach out to you, you can put your contact information on there for that purpose. But otherwise, just for the purposes of the survey, you can throw your name on there to get entered into the drawing.
Right, and then too, there's lots, Michelle's already gone through, so if you do have any questions, something that came up as far as that, definitely give us a call.
All right.
All right.
And while you're filling out, you can feel free to throw a question at me if there's something burning in your mind that you want to ask for the group. Otherwise, I want to thank you for joining. I feel like I talked really, really fast, so I'll stay after for a few minutes too if there's anything somebody wants to talk about one-off. But I really appreciate the invitation. Thank you so much. And with that, we're done. Thank you. Food too.
Yeah,
Oh,
thank
you're
you.
welcome. See you on this one.
Well, I know, I mean, yeah.
Definitely get second.
Yeah.